Hello, everyone. We see you making your way into our Zoom meeting this evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you all are. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes as you all are making your way in. Welcome, welcome. For those who are just joining us, we are welcoming you this evening here in New York today. We know that you all are chiming in from so many different places. And so at this moment in time, if you would like to use the chat to share with us from where you're coming, we would love to give you a shout out. Welcome. All right, Virginia, Atlanta, New Jersey, New York City, we see you. Bronx, Long Island, Brazil, Japan, Connecticut. Woo, fast and furious. Upstate New York is definitely represented. We have Columbus, Ohio, LA, Kenya. Oh my goodness, Maryland, Baltimore, Tampa, Taiwan, Massachusetts, we see you. Brooklyn, Palo Alto, all right, Bay Area, we see you. Litchfield in Connecticut, Ethiopia, Boston, Brooklyn. Oh, welcome, welcome everyone. And for those of you who are just chiming in, we are just giving you all a shout out. If you want to from where you are coming in the chat, we see Paraguay, Mozambique, Bangladesh. I see you, Naziba. Turkey, Essex, Massachusetts, Kentucky, Nepal, Denver, Brazil, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Austin, Ghana. Towson, Maryland, Martha's Vineyard, Montana, Vietnam, Idaho. We see you, Kazakhstan. Oh my goodness, Manhattan, New Jersey. Wowza, you all are truly chiming in from so many different places, and we're grateful that you're spending the next hour with us today. In many different ways. And so, without further ado, as these locations are still chiming in, I would like to introduce myself to you. My name is Janessa Dunn. I serve as Director of Admissions here at Skidmore College, and I am just truly honored to spend the next hour with four fantastic faculty members who represent a variety of different interests, academic interests, but also opportunities to support and mentor students. And so the majority of my time today is to help connect you all with those questions in this way, but looking forward to hearing from our faculty. But there are a few housekeeping notes that we would like to share with you beforehand. Please note that our time today is recorded. We know that it is February, and for many of you, this is right in the middle either of your winter break or in the middle of the school week for you. And so if you do have to step away, please know that this recording will be available within around 24 hours, and it will be right in your inbox to access after today's time. I will also share with you that we will be utilizing the Q&A feature. And so at this point in time, I'm going to close off the chat after you all have definitely shared from where you are coming. I'll make sure that I do a few more shout outs before we delve into our conversation. But we do want to ensure that you're utilizing the Q&A. We have three fabulous admissions team members, Darren, Tiffany, and Gabby, who will be typing away to answer several of your questions about Skidmore. And of course, we'll be answering several of your questions live today with our faculty members. And so please feel free to utilize that Q&A on your tablet, on your laptop, or other device that you are using. I would also share today that our faculty showcase is a slice of the academic experience here at Skidmore. It is not the full breadth and depth, but I know many of you had the opportunity to join our conversation, whether live or through a recording, for our last faculty showcase that represented so many different areas, such as the world languages, specifically in Spanish. We talked about gender studies. We also talked quite a bit about the sciences as well, including chemistry, and other parts of the campus. You will also find today that if you are interested in the performing arts and or the fine arts or visual arts at Skidmore, this is not your last opportunity to connect with us. And in fact, if you have the opportunity to connect with us in person on campus, we do have art-based tours that are led by students who are majoring or minoring in art, hosted by our admissions office. And we also have fabulous office hours presented by wonderful departments such as theater, as well as studio art across our campus. So we're happy to get you connected into those spaces and to physically see those spaces as well, whether virtually or in person. So, at this point in time, you all, I know these are a lot of notes to keep in mind, but I want to ensure that you know what is next at this point in time. I would like to give a few additional shout outs to our audience, and then I will turn it over to our fabulous faculty to introduce themselves. So, for those of you who did share with us, I see Cameroon, Berkshires, Massachusetts, not far, Florida, Sudan, as well as Boston. And so thank you all so much for sharing that. We have many time zones represented today, whether it's early in the morning, afternoon, or evening for you. All right. So at this time, I will transition to share a little bit more about our faculty here who they are excited and eager. So again, please utilize the Q&A at any point during our session today. But I would like to start our conversation today in terms of introductions with Professor Kelly Shepard. Do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, how long you've been at Skidmore, and maybe a fun fact about yourself as well?
Sure, I'm Kelly Shepard. I'm a professor in the chemistry department, teach mostly biochemistry courses, but also teach first year seminar and the impacts of the biotech revolution, bridge experience course on being human in STEM. I also chair our health professions advising here at Skidmore, so help students navigate getting into med school, vet school, nursing, PA, etc. And I'm also heavily involved in collaborative research with students, looking at how to expand the genetic code. And a fun fact, my wife and I have the exact same name.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for that, Professor Shepard. Next, we'll have Professor Karen Kellogg. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone. So glad you could join us tonight. My name's Karen, and I am in our Environmental Studies and Sciences department here at Skidmore. And I've been here for, I hate to even say, like 27 years, I guess. This is my 27th year. So I teach courses, everything from our Intro ES 100 course to renewable energy systems, and a 300 level course called Building Energy Solutions, where we work with community partners on energy systems that they would like to implement in their communities. I also teach an environmental engineering course where we think about taking ecological knowledge and using that to design more sustainable systems for things like wastewater and Superfund remediation and those sorts of things. And I also rotate into our capstone course sequence, which is a year-long CODA experience where students design form teams and design their own research projects and carry that out and then present it to a large energized audience at the end of the semester. I also do a lot of work with our sustainability office on campus, and I've been involved in sustainability for my entire time here. So any questions you have about that, happy to talk about leadership opportunities in that office. And I guess a fun fact, it's hard to follow Kelly Dr. Shepard's fun fact. But maybe a fun fact was I spent the fall semester in London as part of the London first year experience. So happy to answer any questions you have about that as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that context, Professor Kellogg. And I am very excited to learn more about your experience in London as well. I think that will be awesome. Next, Professor Reed, do you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, happy to. Thank you for having me, and glad to be hanging out with all of you tonight. So I'm a professor in the computer science department. I've been here for about 12 years, and I was out in industry before that. I teach a lot of courses, mostly focused more on the applied side. But intro course, a course that we call our software design course, we get into different programming languages than our intro course, which is Python. And then a variety of intermediate courses, data security, web development, um, programming languages and compilers. And one of my favorite courses that I'm teaching this semester is software engineering, where we essentially become a software development shop. And the students have to work together. A group of 20 students have to build a rather large application and figure out how do you work as a team of that size and put a complex system together. So that's always, a lot of fun to see them kind of working their way through that. Um, Fun fact, I'm a very active mini driver. So I participate in a lot of Mini Cooper events. I've driven across the country, I think, 8 times now with Mini Cooper clubs. And I love driving a stick shift. And so that's one of the few cars where you can really enjoy the feel of the road that way. So yeah, definitely love road trips.
That is wonderful. So if I see you on campus with the Mini Cooper, I know it's likely one of yours.
It's the yellow one. Yep.
The yellow one. There we go. There we go. We love it. And last but not least, Professor Overby, do you mind sharing more about yourself?
Hi there, my name is Ryan Overby. I teach in the Religious Studies Department and the Asian Studies program here at Skidmore College. I've been here since 2017. My primary research focus is on Buddhism in medieval South and East Asia. Specifically, I work on Buddhist ritual and Buddhist magic. I teach all kinds of courses here at Skidmore in Asian Studies and Religious Studies. I use film a lot in my Intro to Religion class. I teach courses on Buddhism, on Asian ecology and cosmology. So lots of cross-disciplinary stuff with gender studies, environmental studies, all over the map. And perhaps a fun fact about myself. Um, you may tell from the mechanical keyboard behind me that I'm an avid gamer. So chances are, I mean, who knows? Maybe I've interacted with one of you in the audience in some kind of competitive online game like Rust or Arc Raiders or something like that.
Love it. That's where the professional headset comes in. I see you, Professor Overby. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Well, I am already so excited to dive a little bit deeper into all that you all have presented today. And of course, our faculty are aware of this, but we know that you all who are listening in, you are in the midst of this process, whether you are newly admitted student to the class of 2030, for which we are so excited that you decided to enroll at Skidmore, especially our most recent group of students from Early Decision 2 a couple of weeks ago. And we know that several of you are awaiting your admissions decision, and our admissions team has really enjoyed getting to review your applications. And one of the beautiful things about this process is that we do not admit by major, and we see the full array of all of your interest, the way that you talk about them, the way that your teachers or your counselor highlight those throughout your high school experience, or if you're a transfer student, potential transfer student throughout your college experience in that way. And it's grounded in the liberal arts. And so I would like to start us there with our wonderful faculty members to share a little bit about why the liberal arts and why Skidmore in this regard, especially as it relates to the breadth and depth in multiple subjects. But what makes us different?
I mean, I can start. I don't know how we want to do this, so I'll just say a few things and then others jump on in. So I think the world's issues are not disciplinary, right? So they cross disciplines, and so I think what is so amazing about the liberal arts, right, is that you become critical thinkers, but you also become interdisciplinary thinkers. And when we talk to people out in the work world, they definitely look for good communication skills, but they also look for interdisciplinary thinkers because so many of the problems we face span across disciplines. I think that's really, really important. And I think the other thing that's great about Skidmore is that we ask you to think holistically about your educational experience, right? So not just, what sort of courses, on-campus courses make sense for you in terms of building, disciplinary expertise, but interdisciplinary critical thinking skills. But also then how do you think about all the other experiences that we ask you to think about, like study abroad, for example, internships, research with faculty and research at other institutions, and how do we think about all those things as early as possible so that you can maximize what you get out of your 4 years here? Because as you talk to seniors, which I just left another event where it was full of room full of seniors, and they're sitting there telling, you were right, first year, you told us things fly, and those 4 years really do fly. So asking to take advantage of all that we have to offer as early as possible is great.
Yeah, and I'd love to kind of pick up just talking about that cross-disciplinary piece. Is one of the great things about being here is that, even though I'm in the computer science department, students are taking ideas from other disciplines. It's pretty common to double major with computer science. It's easy to fit other courses of study in, and it combines well. I mean, I've worked with students in art where they've done art installations and used little computers like Raspberry Pis to do very creative things. And then worked with students in psychology who have used computers to, go after certain kinds of phobias and see, can we use, some kind of software to help address that. And it's so great to see students taking this love and energy that they have across different disciplines and figuring out, how do I combine that and turn it into something that I love. And it's not about what the course is about or what this professor just wants to research, but it's about what does the student want to accomplish. And I love that energy that they bring.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here with a concrete example. I'm teaching a course right now called Buddhism in the Body, which is all about the ways that the Buddhist tradition classically has thought about, how the body is important, how it can be changed or transformed through religious practice, how it's valued or devalued in different religious contexts. Um, That's a 300 level religious studies course. And I think the difference between a liberal arts institution like Skidmore and maybe a research kind of university, like a University of Michigan or a UC Berkeley or something like that, is that in my 300 level religious studies course, I've got psychology majors who are thinking really critically about this ancient Buddhist material and bringing it to like discussions with Sheldon Solomon in the psychology lab, right? I've got a chemistry major, I believe, in this class. I've got a philosophy major. It's not just religious studies students all in one clique. This is a 300 level class. There's a lot of reading. It's very scary. They're climbing that mountain together and they're all bringing their own perspectives. And I think that multidisciplinary perspective totally enriches everything we're doing in the classroom.
And I'll add on to that, what that brings too, as Karen also mentioned, those critical skills looking forward after Skidmore that get developed. We had one chemistry major who was a dance minor. She ended up choreographing her synthetic mechanism for her research, which was just amazing. I was just talking with a grad student at Harvard who is killing it, is doing excellent. And what she's noticing is, oh, I'm so well prepared that I'm actually ahead of other students in grad school. And where I see it the most is in the health professions, right? Where you really do have to synthesize all the liberal arts together. You have to have that science foundation, but you also need the humanities, the arts, the social sciences to be able to really listen to another person's story and hear what they're saying, not what you want to hear from them, so that you can be an effective provider for them. And when you look at what med schools are looking for, it's a liberal arts education with a good science foundation. And we're able to do that really well here at Skidmore and have you integrate it together so you're well prepared no matter what you're going to do in life. And you can also enjoy your life more, too. So it's the career plus enjoyment of life.
I absolutely love that. And I'm going to geek out a little bit. I was a chemistry major in college and was very liberal artsy, played the oboe in the orchestra and studied Spanish. And so to hear Mr. Shepherd about a student using choreography to display the research is so exciting. I have also enjoyed recently sitting on the chemistry floor in our beautiful Center for Integrated Science, looking at all of the beautiful posters that Professor Shepherd students actually created, which was great. So I geeked out a little bit there not long ago as well. But all of that to say, it is really exciting to hear all of those fabulous examples of how the liberal arts, specifically at Skidmore, allows that intertwining, but also the practicality those experiences as well for life after Skidmore. And so my next question for you all really relates to what's happening in the classroom. So some of you all have hinted towards things that are happening. So what is something that is most exciting to you right now, especially for a class that maybe you may be teaching this semester, maybe a former class as well? Kind of bring us in a little bit. Whoever would like to start us off.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. Last semester, I got to teach a cybersecurity course for the first time, where we got to really dig into some concepts, hacking into wireless networks and things like that. And what was really interesting was the different students' way of looking at what these attacks meant. We did some things where they got to essentially steal personal identifying information and then combine it with information that they found from other sources, and started to really get a picture of why this stuff matters. But what was cool for me is that the classroom wasn't just computer science students, right? There weren't a bunch of prereqs, and a lot of our computer science courses don't have a lot of prereqs, especially at the 200 level, because we want students from around the campus. The same way that you can take music lessons, you should be able to explore some computer science concepts without having to be a programmer. I mean, that's just one part of computer science, and so being able to open things like that up to multiple students and having their eyes kind of go, whoa, I've heard about this, but wow, now I see what's really going on. And that it's just a lot of fun. And being in a liberal arts environment. And one of the things about me is I actually started off thinking I was going to be a music teacher. I went to college originally for music, but found that I loved it as an avocation more than a vocation. So I can identify with these students who they've got these different interests and they want to be able to try different things and experience it. So that to me was a really fun course where they got to see something they hear about in the news, but they got to experience it.
Ryan, do you want to go or should I hop on in? Okay, so what you're going to hear, I think, over and over again from people is, these sort of innovative and also hands-on types of engagement in the classroom that often spill beyond the walls of the classroom or the laboratory, right? So I'm teaching my environmental engineering course this semester, and that course is structured around thinking about alternative ways, perhaps more sustainable ways of doing things like wastewater treatment. And the unit that we're on right now, we actually visit a Superfund site that's not far away, and we talk to experts that are involved in the remediation of that site, and we talk to them about sort of the more conventional approaches to remediation, and then we design. We talk about bioremediation and using plants and fungi as opposed to, digging up soil and having it incinerated. Thinking about designing an experiment to test the effectiveness of mycoremediation and phytoremediation to attack those same sorts of toxins, right? And then we evaluate critically whether that is truly a better holistic approach than more conventional methods. So you get a little bit of site visits, you get to talk to experts, you actually design experiments, you quantify those toxins that you're looking at using our Skidmore Analytical Interdisciplinary Laboratory, which is a facility that is full of incredible instrumentation that can look at everything from ions to heavy metals to all sorts of other things, right? Including some portable instrumentation too. So it just is really hands-on research experience and hands-on evaluation of different approaches to some of the environmental issues that we're facing. And we also draw on alums to come in and talk to us about different topics that we're discussing. And I think that's another thing you'll see that Skidmore does really well is you automatically become part of this network of alums that are off doing amazing things and they actually want to talk to you about their experiences. So that's another great thing I think about Skidmore.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. I think exciting things going on in the classroom. Again, the interdisciplinarity of things is so wonderful and continues to be just a joy for my teaching here. Um, I think one of the things that's personally exciting to me is twofold. It feels like we had a real, how would I put this? As a teacher, I was very careful during the whole COVID crisis of just like, how do we get back into kind of deep reading rigor in the classroom when, during COVID, people were just like fighting to survive, basically. And it feels like really in the last year or two, things have really turned the corner in terms of that. Like I'm starting to feel in the classroom like my students um, are excited to do a lot of work. Like I'm assigning way too much reading in my 300 level religious studies course, and they're climbing that mountain. And they're like building a community while they're doing it. And I think the experience of that challenge is really novel and exciting and invigorating to them. And maybe some of them weren't even expecting that in a humanities class, but that's what they're getting, right? As a lot of rigor and a lot of depth. Um, so I've been just like I've been on fire this past year, just so excited about how students are back into a mode, I think, post-COVID of real depth and rigor. And I think part of that has to do with just also the stakes are very high right now. I feel like in our world, right? And I think students are starting to see the value of the really deep questions we're asking in the classroom, and they want to change things in the world, right? And that makes them want to put in the work to sort of make their dreams come true, politically, socially, in their own lives and sort of personal goals. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that. Um, because it's similar with to Ryan. Like when I'm in the classroom, we're having discussions. Students are reading, you know, research articles in depth, and we're talking about them as a class. Critiquing what could have been done differently. What's the next experiment? And I'm challenging students to think about, okay, here's this metabolic disease that we don't yet have a cure for. What are potential approaches for developing new therapeutics? And, students are coming up with all these great ideas. And every year it's the same thing where I'm like, you know what? You've come up with everything that people are working on right now. Um, and that fits with, the creativity of our students and their desire to really make an impact in the world.
Yeah, my heart is so filled by hearing each and every one of you talk so deeply and passionately about what's happening not only in your classroom, but the impact that it's having on students in their own development and their trajectory at Skidmore and beyond. And that is just beautiful in a lot of ways from my end. And as I'm looking at the Q&A here, we are seeing several questions come through. And so some of it actually connects to the conversation that we were talking about, particularly as Professor Overby mentioned, regarding deep topics, big topics. And so the admissions team has had the opportunity to visit many high schools around the country, around the globe, and to get to listen to what's going on, and we hear it. I think one of the biggest topic that we're hearing on the high school side is AI, and I think that's the biggest topic that colleges are grappling with right now, or one of the biggest ones that we're grappling with. And so there's a fantastic question from a student: is how do you feel as professors about AI and AI in education. And I will preface this by saying that we may have varied answers in many different ways and in many in wonderful ways. So that's a great question from Sophia. Thank you.
I'll jump in first. So for me, with generative I see it, yeah, as a tool that has costs associated with anything that we do in our society. And, what's the cost benefit analysis there? And, the goal in the classroom in my research is we're here to learn. Um, and when you're learning, you kind of have to force your brain to engage in ways it doesn't want to. Because your brain costs a lot of energy to maintain, and it costs a lot of energy to think. Learning is not easy, it requires work. So, how do I construct, the classroom to help students in that process? Um, and AI sometimes can be this, easy button, but when you do the easy button, you don't learn, and that's not why we're here. So I spend a lot of time in my classroom talking about metacognition. How do we learn? Um, and helping students reflect on their learning experience. I also, with the generative you know, trying to get students to think about what other tools might actually be better. For example, for doing a search in biochemistry, PubMed works significantly better than generative AI in coming up with quality results a lot faster. So figuring out how to use the correct tools, but also then when you're looking at the output that's generated, is this accurate or not, right? So really developing those information literacy skills. I still do take-home exams. My take-home exam now is I'll put in prompts, put in, a generative AI response and have students go through and, okay, how accurate is this? How well does this fit with what we've talked about in class? You know, which days in the class does this fit to? How does this fit into our learning goals? And then have students reflect on that experience. And students are really enjoying that and really embracing it and learning a lot in the process.
I'll jump in here. You'll see a lot of, I mean, if you're asking these questions like, what is it like at Skidmore? I think it's going to differ from professor to professor and from field to field, and from student to student. There are lots of professors who are using AI as a tool in the classroom and teaching students prompt engineering, um, preparing them for careers in this stuff. And a lot of students are very excited about that. There are other professors like me who are like, we're gonna have a printed course reader, and we're gonna sit down in class and we're gonna read deeply together. And there's no, gonna be no devices open at all. And I think both approaches are super, super valuable to students. And at Skidmore, you're going to get the full range of that. The one thing I will say is that a residential, small liberal arts college is a thing that doesn't scale, right? And that's actually where the value lies, is you are physically in a room with a teacher who's like a personal trainer at the gym, right? Like this is a person who can teach, like if your legs are weak, they're going to teach you how to like make your legs stronger and they're going to teach you to do the work, right? Um, and you can't really get that at an institution that is sort of much, much bigger that might be tempted to use AI tools as ways of achieving scale, as ways of cutting costs, frankly, right? Um, the experience you get here intimately in a small classroom with a professor who cares about you and your development is so, so valuable. And sometimes those professors who care about your development will say very specifically, yeah, you're not bringing AI into this classroom experience, and there are very good reasons for that. So you're going to get a range of answers from different professors.
I don't really have much to add. I so appreciate Dr. Shepard's and Overby's comments. And I think that, yeah, in some ways, we're asking people to engage in a range of critique about AI, which in itself is helping us learn to critically think, right? And I think the other thing that I'll add from an environmental studies and sciences perspective, and Dr. Shepard sort of hinted at this too, the analysis of what does AI mean from an environmental footprint, right? From a water and energy use perspective. So lots of different dimensions being critically evaluated.
Yeah, and I'll add, and I think similar to what Dr. Shepard mentioned, I also talk to my students about how do you learn? And there's rehearsal and there's practice and these aren't bad things. And if the machine just spits out an answer, you skipped all that and you have little likelihood that you'd be able to do it yourself the next time. In some ways, I liken it to having training wheels on a bicycle. I never learned to ride the bicycle while there were training wheels on it. As soon as they came off, I fell. I had to ride it without the training wheels to finally figure it out. And, in this case, I have a tool that I use in the room where students can access AI. But we have some rules about it there. On a lab assignment, for instance, they have to do two parts of it completely on their own. They can use AI for some assistance on another part. But a big thing is they have to reflect after they've used it. And I'll ask them questions like, okay, now that you've done that, do you have more or less confidence in your ability now to do that without the AI? And really reflect on what impact has it had on what I'm here for, which is to learn. And how did it impact that goal? And what's fascinating to me is how many students really do think about that and are not interested really in replacing their learning process with that tool. And so it's kind of interesting. At first, I thought, oh, they're all just going to want to use this tool, but it is interesting how many students really say, "Do I have to use it?" And things like that. So I think people are aware that easy button, as you said, comes at a cost. And there's an environmental cost as well, but it comes at a cost of what's your goal of being in school.
And it ties in, actually, Ryan and I are on a committee where one of David's colleagues, who has been in the AI field for a long time, pointed out was he's able to use AI really effectively because of his depth of knowledge and understanding. And so, with that, experience and that expertise, he's able to leverage the tool really well. Whereas if you don't have that knowledge and expertise, it becomes a lot harder to effectively use generative AI. So part of what you're hearing is us talking about how do we make sure you develop those expertise still, so that you can use AI not just in your first job, but subsequent jobs as you get promoted and move on in positions.
And oh my goodness, and it connects really well with a follow-up question from a student. How do you account for life after a few years, particularly as the rise of AI affects the workplace and job placement and what that looks like? And I will share from my perspective, one of the pieces. That I appreciate in the education field. There's a lot of research that, particularly predictive analyses for Gen Z as well as Gen Alpha, which is right behind you all at this point in time, that we're expecting for this particular generation of learners to have 3 to 5 careers throughout their lifetime, not 3 to 5 jobs, 3 to 5 careers, which is fascinating in a lot of ways. And what I hear from all of our faculty in this space and hearing from you all, but also knowledge in the field is the liberal arts education is actually setting you up for success for that space. The interdisciplinary nature, the transferable skills, the application to different settings where you're trained not only in one area, but another area, and sometimes a third area or more, depending on your interest. And so you have this ambidextrous way of how you're approaching life, and it allows our students to be much more adaptable for those changes throughout their career trajectory. So I appreciate that follow-up question, given how deep and impactful this question is for our wonderful students here. And so at this moment in time, there are several questions that relate to advising, mentorship. Whomever would like to start us off, and actually, I may actually ask Professor Kellogg, if you don't mind starting us off, because you had the experience with London, with our first year students in particular. Can you walk us through it a little bit? About what does faculty advising look like from first year all the way into a student's graduation and even beyond across the panel today.
Yeah, sure. And again, others jump in. So I think, well, advising starts the summer before you come to campus. So you are assigned, which is wonderful, whether you're talking about the London FYE or just all students are assigned a summer advisor. And that may be your Scribner seminar instructor, or it might be somebody else that can advise you during the summer. But it's really helpful to have somebody that summer talk to you about what courses make the most sense for you for that beginning semester, right? To set you up to explore the different things that you want to explore, to create the most flexibility for you in terms of subsequent semesters. And all of the things, right? All of the questions that we have as incoming students, what does even study abroad look like in out years, right? So you have that really, I think, intense and helpful summer advising experience. And then you have your Scribner seminar. And your Scribner seminar advisor is your advisor typically until you actually declare your major. And so, as part of the Scribner seminar, you have sort of ongoing advising and mentoring, not just by the faculty member in that seminar, but a peer mentor that also can give you all sorts of ins and outs of campus life that maybe faculty might not even be aware of. So there's this really supportive advising mentoring experience, I think, in the Scribner seminar. And then every semester, your advisor talks to you. Well, there's typically advising sessions and other things that happen within departments, but then you have a really, I think, rich conversation with your advisor every semester as you're thinking about, as the course schedule comes out and you're looking at the semester ahead. And again, I think one thing Skidmore prides itself on, and I think we do a fantastic job, is what I mentioned earlier, is that advisors don't just help you pick your classes, right, for the following semester. They help you think holistically about your educational experience. What do your on-campus courses look like? How does that help you explore your interests and and also move you along in terms of a major or multiple majors, as one of the other faculty members mentioned earlier, and also just continuing to encourage you to explore the liberal arts, right? That's why you're at a place like Skidmore. So don't just get into your major and just go with your major. Like, keep exploring and develop your interests, right? And think about the context of that major. What else makes sense for you to be taking? And then also, again, thinking about study abroad. I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but I think they're back up to pre-COVID numbers. About 60% of our students study abroad, typically their junior year. And how does that experience fit with those on-campus courses? How do internships, how do research experiences, how do leadership roles in co-curricular life all come together to create the experience that you want at Skidmore?
And I'll piggyback on that too. It, thinking about, yeah, those internships, co-curriculars. It's also thinking about what you're going to do over the summer. How do you apply for funds that Skidmore has available, the Summer Experience Fund, See Beyond, that helps students pay for that. It then builds to your senior year with what's known as the senior coda, which each department and program has thought about. How to get you to reflect on your education, what you've done, and where you're going next as well, and making sure you're prepared for that. And in that context of advising, too, is making sure you make connections. Your advisor is going to help you think about, hey, first year, second year, these are good times to go to the Career Development Center and start taking advantage of those resources. You shouldn't just be going your senior year. And then we also have students, for example, who, if you're interested in pre-health, you sign up for the Health Professions Advising Committee, and you get assigned a secondary advisor who will work with you even after you graduate. Because more and more students going to med school, vet school, are taking a gap year or two. And we help the students, how do you fit the liberal arts education into navigating to successfully get into these really competitive programs. We're going to help you prepare your materials. We're going to do mock interviews with you. We're going to be with you every step of the way, giving you feedback and support, and honest feedback to help you in that process. I don't know if Ryan and David have additional to add to that.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. Thanks. And I don't know if this is taking us off on a tangent, but when you said mentoring, I also thought about the fact that one of my favorite things is when a student approaches me with a question, something they want to explore, and it's really not my field. I mean, I can understand the intersection. So, for instance, this semester, a student came to me and really wanted to understand quantum computing. And I know very little about quantum computing. I've read some books. I don't really clearly understand them. I've never taken physics beyond kind of high school level physics. And so what he did is he went over to the physics department and said, would you be willing to meet with me and Professor Reed once a week and take us through these papers and help us understand? And so we're meeting as a group. So, and I've had students do this before where they'll take faculty from different departments and say, can we work together to figure something out? And so that's really a cool way that he's exploring this area that he has an interest in, that there isn't necessarily a course for, but he's kind of created a course around it. And so that, to me, that's part of that mentoring. It's just that being open to these ideas.
Yeah, and I would say the the different kinds of advising that happen at Skidmore are not just about careers and credentials and sort of taking that next step. Um, and this might just reflect my own positionality in the humanities and especially in a religious studies department, but we have a lot of deep conversations with our students in office hours about life, about our values, um, and those go far beyond just like the academic, right? Those get into sort of very, very deep questions about like who am I, what kind of person am I becoming, and what kind of person do I want to be? Um, and I like to think that I think we're pretty good at those conversations here. And we're pretty open to those conversations. So the relationships you can have with your students are pretty meaningful and profound in that sense. I've gotten letters from students years after they graduated from Skidmore that tell me, say to me things like, this class that I took changed my life, and the conversations we had in my office hours changed my life. And like to me, like I don't care about course evaluations. I don't care about metrics and all of that stuff. Sorry, Kelly does assessment stuff, and sorry, Kelly. But like the thing that I actually care about is those letters, right? That say like you changed my life. And the relationship that we had was really, really meaningful. So that kind of stuff happens at Skidmore.
My dear goodness, yes. And as a staff member at Skidmore, that was what immediately drew me into this really special community, and having the opportunity to have served wonderful institutions, a large public university, medium-sized research one university, and a medium-sized liberal arts university, I found that as I like to call it, medium-sized liberal arts college, in which Skidmore is in terms of relationships, but also that the kindness and the curiosity is profound. And my wonderful colleagues here in the background who are wonderfully answering these questions. Thank you again, Gabby, Tiffany, and Darren, all have very special connections to Skidmore, whether they're alums or parents of alums or a spouse of an alum. And being able to have this experience and to share that and to feel that even in the profession is a beautiful aspect. So thank you so all of you for sharing all of those wonderful attributes. So there are a few other questions here, and I want to try to do some rapid fire because some are very specific here. But there was one question actually for David, Professor Reed, from a student, Heba, who is asking about that intersection between music and computer science and really the thought of combining creativity with technology. And so can you share a little bit about how computer science at Skidmore allows you to integrate those pieces? And you talked a little bit about that in your introduction today as well.
Yeah, happy to. So I appreciate the question. I think one of so my soapbox for a moment, the field of computer science is poorly named, and it causes us to make assumptions about what it is. It's as if I called chemistry microscope science, right? It's not an accurate description. And so we're focused on a device. um, Computer science really is the science of informatics. It's about information and computation or processing or management and changing that information. And so if you think about it, it's really, there's a lot of art to it. And that's the connection I always found with music, was that the same creativity I had to use in composing a piece of music felt very similar to composing a program, to this idea of an algorithm, and there's a limited vocabulary, just like there is in music. And so there is a huge connection just in terms of how you think about approaching a problem in those two fields. And I've had students who have double majored between music and computer science. Some of them are interested in doing things like, audio engineering or working more on that side of things. Others use it for composition. I've had students try to use machine learning and take forms of music, sonata and whatnot, and see if they can build models of what that is, and then generate maybe new music. But really, can they kind of decode what made Bach sound like Bach and Haydn sound like Haydn? And it's just fascinating as you see that this is really just taking information and understanding it. It has nothing to do with this box, right, full of chips or what have you. It's about that information and the way we as humans connect to it. So I love the connection between those two, and maybe some degree because I have an understanding of both. But I think in all the arts, I mean, I've got dance majors doing computer science, and there's a lot of similarity between that creativity on what we think of as an art on the art side and the creativity we need on the computer science side. So yeah, I think they're very connected.
Wonderful, wonderful. And speaking of doing both, we've had several students and who have been able to combine the performing arts or the visual arts with STEM or the humanities or a combination of so many different areas, which is beautiful, and also still pursue a pre-professional track at Skidmore. So this next question is actually for Dr. Shepherd. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about you talked a little bit more about the health professions advisory committee, but how students who are pursuing those interests can still take advantage of study abroad, internships, while maintaining their competitiveness to some great programs.
I would say that's part of how you develop to be competitive. And in terms of developing it, it needs to be that authentic development of who do you want to be as a person, which gets at those, really in-depth conversations with advisors that Ryan was talking about. Who do you want to be as a physician and why? How do you want to develop to get there? And so that's part of the conversations that we have with students. What are your priorities? What are your interests? How do you want to develop as a person to be a provider, medical provider? So, we'll work with you to go to study abroad. That's not an issue. That's easy to do. You can major in anything you want and go to med school. That's, easy figuring out the classes. It's that authentic development that's really going to set you apart from others who are applying, especially when you get to the interview stage. Um, it's really easy to identify the students that are applying to med school and just checking off boxes. Those aren't the people you want to be doctors, to be vets, to be dentists. You want the people who have authentically thought about and developed in the way that allows them to be their full selves. And so those are the conversations that we have. So, yeah, study abroad, internships, collaborative research are all part of the story of developing to get to med school or vet school or nursing school. It's just, what path do you want and who do you want to be? And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here with a liberal arts education. What does it mean to be human? And there's no one path, right? It's going to be a unique path for each and every single student.
Beautiful answer, Dr. Shepherd. And we have two fabulous ambassadors who may have given a few of you a tour of Skidmore if you've had the opportunity to come. One who is graduating, who had pursued a pre-health track at Skidmore, who double majored in health and human sciences or physiological sciences, as well as dance in many different ways, and did research every summer, funded research, and has an acceptance and has chosen which school they're going to be pursuing with the scholarship at this moment in time. And we had one student who just returned, who graduated class of 2025, who completed a fellowship at the University of Michigan. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, who now has been accepted to 5 PhD programs, and they have some really important decisions to make, specifically in physics. But this student also majored in dance, which was amazing. And so it is so incredible to see that you can do both, and our curriculum is designed to do both in many different ways. And so at this moment in time, we have a few minutes before we wind down our time this evening. But I do want to ask just a question that is really kind of goes back to creativity and collaboration. Just quickly, are there any favorite combinations of different projects that you all have had with students that you're most proud of, or even some that may have surprised you throughout your years here at Skidmore?
I'll start. I had a class on race and power in American Buddhism. It was about meditation, capitalism, and the representations of African American and Asian American Buddhist histories. Um, so lots of, you know, uh, interesting reading material. But a student did a final project for that class that was they did a choreographed piece with two dancers. They filmed it. That was their first time being a filmmaker. Um, and so a lot of work went into just like learning how to be a director, learning how to edit. It was deeply researched. And this is just one of those things that happens at Skidmore College where you're like, you would think, okay, I'm going to do an interpretive dance based on the stuff that we're reading. You would think that's like the most cliched kind of liberal arts thing that could possibly happen. Um, but I was so impressed by the quality of it, the depth of it, the research that went into it, and the execution on it. And I was like, this is incredible work that just like, it's so Skidmore, and it just doesn't happen at other places that I've been.
I mean, I have examples like that too, just where students come and, I mean, our students are they're just such interesting people, right? And they're so multi-talented. And we see it in these projects that we've talked about already. And there are lots of other examples where students are pursuing these diverse interests, not in parallel, but in this synergistic kind of way that leads to these new types of performance, these new types of questions, and that sort of thing. I also, um, in environmental studies and sciences, and I think this just points to things more broadly, not just in ESS, but where we have these super groups for research, and they're students that are performing, like evaluating natural science as well as social science and environmental justice sorts of issues. So one example is we had a super group where one part of that team was actually taking some of the first water quality measurements in the Hudson River in the winter downstream of these major combined sewer overflow pipes where raw sewage just gets dumped into the Hudson River. And so they were doing this important work quantifying water quality, right? Chemically. And then the other part of that supergroup was actually evaluating what does this mean from an environmental justice perspective? What does it mean from a policy and communications perspective? And how can we alert communities downstream of these combined sewer overflow events when they happen, to really provide a public health service as well. So those sorts of things happen all over the place too. Just again, examples of deep interdisciplinary thinking and collaboration.
Wonderful, wonderful. And thank you all so much for providing those wonderful examples. And I appreciate that question from our student here. There are a couple of questions, and I know we're going to start to wrap up here, but there is one question regarding the nature of belonging at Skidmore and difference, and if what that may mean for a student. And we know that our audience here represents a wide variety of lived experiences and backgrounds, race, ethnicity, religious affiliation, gender identity, and so many wonderful attributes. And what I appreciate about this really special community in many ways is exactly what Professor Overby and our panelists have mentioned. We are a small liberal arts college that is residential, and it is designed for connection. And when we evaluate you all for Skidmore, we are evaluating you all that you're learning from each other, not only within the classroom, but in the dining hall, on the way, to an event. We have a ton of posters that represent a very wide range of experiences and perspectives on our campus, even if there's dissonance. And so I will share that we have a common a culture at Skidmore of active dialogue that's grounded in kindness, but also doesn't shy away from the hard, difficult conversations. A theme that we've talked about today. We like to dig deep, even regardless of discipline. I can't speak for any specific questions. There was a very specific question regarding what does it mean do students experience racism on our campus? And I think the biggest piece is what I encourage, and we are as faculty, as staff, in many different ways, is to connect directly with students. And so we encourage you, if you who have the opportunity, to join us for one of our student AMAs. We host them almost every Thursday for both applicants as well as their students. Without admission, staff in the room, we want you to be able to connect with current students. We know because we're a residential campus, we want you to be able to connect. And I'll also share that we have a really wonderful shared governance structure, students, faculty, and staff representation globally as well as domestically that represents a wide variety of lived experiences on our campus. And we're happy to connect with you regarding living in upstate New York. I am not from the Northeast in general, and I've found a very special home in the Saratoga Springs area, and it has truly become home, even though it is very different from where I grew up. And so we look forward to continuing that conversation. So I know there's one last question that I want to share to wrap us up today, and I want to get us into the next couple of minutes. But for our professors, what piece of advice would you share with our students? We have many high school students who are in their senior year, their last moments right now. Some have received admissions decisions, some are waiting on admissions decisions, some are trying to figure out exactly what they're going to be doing for this next phase of life. So, what advice would you share to this wonderful group, or even parents and guardians that are represented today as well?
The number one piece of advice I always give, not only to people about to go into college, but especially first years in their first year of college, is be vulnerable and open to the fact that a good liberal arts education will transform your life. And if a good liberal arts education does its job, if we as professors do our job, then the plans you have when you come into college will change. And this is especially a message to parents. Be prepared for your student to be transformed and expect their plans to change and recognize that that is a wonderful thing because they're figuring out who they are. And we're here to help them in that process. So that's my advice.
I second that.
I think that being open is vital. I think also that vulnerability comes with an ability to um, be willing to accept that you're not going to know everything, and that it is safe, and in fact, it's healthy to be asking questions. Um, Sometimes, a student might be nervous and say, "Oh, gee, I'm going to out myself that I don't understand something." But that's when you're learning, and that's when you are figuring out who you are, is by taking in more information. And so, being vulnerable and being comfortable with the fact that that vulnerability is healthy is very important, I think, as you're starting your academic career.
And I concur with everyone. And I would just add with that, if you're really challenging yourself to really learn and transform, sometimes you're going to fail. And that's what we're here to help you learn from that failure and to do it in a way that really allows you to do what Ryan was talking about. Like, figure out who you really want to be and who you are. And that's never going to be the same through, your life. It's always going to be changing. And so it's going to help you set up for a really wonderful life. And that is our goal. That is what we're here for.
All wonderful sound advice. Absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much, Professors Ryan, Kelly, Karen, and David, for sharing your wonderful experiences here at Skidmore. And for our audience, thank you for joining us. If you're here with us live, you'll be able to see some opportunities to stay connected if you have any specific questions regarding what was shared here. But again, our time today was a slice of the Skidmore experience, not the full experience. And so if there's any way that our team in admissions can connect you with faculty members, please feel free to email us at admissions@skidmore.edu, and we are happy to get you where you need to be and where you need to go. But for those of you who are experiencing winter right now, we hope you stay warm. For those of you on the other side of the world, in that way, we hope you're experiencing some nice weather and being able to enjoy your day or evening or afternoon. Until next time, you all, we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.